All right. Well, we will formally get started. So my name is Sheila, and myself and Mika, we both work for Halpern Enterprises, which is the importer of Vega Sicilia here in Ontario, and has been for about 20 years. Definitely one of the wineries we've been working with the longest. So today we have Gonzalo here, who's the winemaker, the current winemaker, I believe since 2005? Or 2015, sorry. And Alessandro from Bar Isabel here in Toronto. So thank you all for joining us. I just want to get started in terms of a bit of the layout. So this will be on our YouTube channel. What we've been doing is for the last kind of started when COVID unfortunately began here, is we wanted to still have a focus on education. And so often, we're very lucky with people coming to the market, being able to do winemaker dinners, being able to do events, and all of that kind of came to a grinding halt. So we thought, use technology a little bit to actually still be able to connect with people and learn and have some interesting dialogue throughout this time. So we started about, I don't know, was it 7 or 8 weeks ago, I think? And we've been fortunate enough to have some producers from Burgundy, from California, from Tuscany, from Piedmont, and very excited to have you joining us today as well. So
thank you very much for having me, or for having us.
Of course. So I just kind of want to get started a little bit with Vega Sicilia is truly probably one of the most storied properties in Spain, and if not the world. I was wondering if you could just kind of give us a bit of the backstory. I mean, it's 1864, I believe, is when it was created, correct?
Yes, 1864 was Eloy Lecanda. Eloy Lecanda, he for me, he was one of the most important person in the history of Vega Sicilia. He was a quite visionary guy, and he planted the vines in the right place. In fact, if today we can drink wine from 1915, 1920s, it's thanks because he have a great intuition, and he planted in the right place. He was really visionary because he also brought different varietals from Bordeaux, Cabernet Sauvignon, Malbec, Petit Verdot, Merlot, and many other varietals. Now we keep using two of them, Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot for Unicorn, for Barbonat. But for me, in the history, he was really important, and after him, his philosophy has always stayed in the house. After him was the family Herrero from the from 1890, more or less, to 1950. There were 3 generations on the family Herrero. And for me, the most important thing they did was to have a Chomin. Chomin, he was the first winemaker in the house who started doing this long aging process. With barrels, with vats, with fooders. So he was the first, and after him, all the winemakers we've been doing also, of course, with evolution, we've been doing this long aging process. After the family Herrero was in 1948, Prodes bought the winery. Prodes was an enterprise that produced different crops, but for them, the winemaking was not really important. But they put Jesus Anadont in front of the winery, and Jesus Anadont for me is also one of the most important people of the winery. Jesus, he's been there with Prodes, after with Neumann, a Venezuela guy who bought the winery in the 60s and sold the winery to the Alvarez in 1982. And it was in 1982 that Pablo Alvarez and the family Alvarez bought the winery finally. So there has been many owners, but the philosophy always been the same. Our terroir, our vines, the heritage that Eloy Lecanda put in 150 years ago.
So he was working in Bordeaux. Is that correct? Is that why he ended up with the Bordeaux?
Well, he was. We don't really know. He was a really guy who likes to move, and he was engineer agronome, and he had plenty of different ideas. So he was a sort of a crazy guy. But we don't really sure if he was working in Bordeaux. But he had a great influence of Bordeaux. That's for sure. That's why he brought all these varietals, and he started doing this wines. At the beginning, he also produced brandies and cognacs and other stuff.
Do you still have any of those in the cellar?
Well, the oldest bottle we have in the cellar was not from this period. The oldest bottle we had is from 1915. I had the chance once in New York to try one bottle. So, but that's the oldest one, and it was not from his period. It was from Herrera's period. But I would like to have a sort of thing that moved you in the time. I met him in the past because he had to be someone really special, right?
You don't have any secret casks of brandy kicking around in the bodega?
No, not really, not really. It's a pity. It's a pity. It's a pity.
Alessandro, what was your original connect? When do you remember the first time you tasted the wines or had access to them?
Oh boy. I mean, prior to Bar Isabel, I used to work at a restaurant called Cava that was also Spanish focused. And so we did have some access to the wines there. I was much younger. This is going back now. Oh boy, 15 years maybe. So, you know, I was just a young chit of a boy. And, you know, there are always wines. If you're talking about Spanish wine, you're talking about, there are a few properties that you always talk about. And one of them is obviously Vega Sicilia. There's no way around it. It's just, you know, the único es único, and that's what it is, right? So when you're talking about the great Spanish wines, who else would you talk about, right? So any Spanish restaurant that is focused on classics, which as far as I'm concerned are things that give you longevity, you should have at least one offering from Vega on your list, be it one of the smaller offerings or, you know, one of the more classic offerings.
I mean, you've really kind of been at the head of bringing Spanish food and wine to the forefront in this city. I think, you know, before the two restaurants that you just named, it wasn't here to that level and people as familiar with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and even still, Toronto doesn't have a huge following for Spanish food and wine. I think that Spanish wine internationally and in general has made great strides in the last 20 years specifically. Vega Sicilia obviously is its own brand. It's its own unique brand and has always been that way. It's always commanded respect internationally, regardless of the state of Spanish wine, which has fluctuated quite a bit. But, you know, that speaks to quality and it speaks to the product, quite frankly. You know, the wines they're special wines and they're a benchmark, right? So when you have a quality product at that level, you know, it becomes, from a restaurateur's perspective, you know, you need to have those on your list because it's, even if people aren't always buying those products, because let's be honest, they're not, you know, they're not always accessible price points for a lot of people, but it's a signifier. It says, you know, we buy these products, we have them on our list because we look for quality, and somebody will look at that and say, oh, these people have Vega Sicilia. The other stuff should be good too, right?
So you have quite a vertical on your list.
Yeah, we have a vertical of Unico right now, a small vertical, just 3. And the vertical of, we have a Valbuena vertical as well as having current vintages of the Allion, because the Allion always sells out. We can never buy enough. And the Pintia, we have 2 vintages, but I only have 1 bottle left of the previous vintage, which I wish I could hold them back because, you know, the wines really do lend themselves to extremely long aging. And we occasionally buy some stuff if we see it at auction, but it doesn't. Usually the auction bottles go quickly because they're well aged.
You don't see it very often, yeah, in auction.
Usually there's small lots, like 1 or 2 bottles from notable vintages. So, you know, the 2004 Unico, I think, has come up a little bit. 1980, you know, but these bottles are still very ready to go. Like you know, a bottle of 1980 Unico, you can happily drink that. It's ready. It's good.
Well, maybe we can jump into specifically from Vega Sicilia, the wines right now. And do you mind just kind of running through, I mean, both the Unico, Valbuena, and Reserva Especiale a little bit and describing them for us?
Okay. Well, I think can I put a sort of schema that I made that maybe you can understand much more the the way we age the wines?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to try. I'm very good at this. Compartir. No. I don't know how to do it. Un momento. Well, no, I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to do it. Well, Único, Valbuena, and Reserva Especial, they are the three wines we produce in the winery. All the state, in all the state, we have around 210 hectares in total. But we use for Valbuena Único around 100 and Reserva Especial around 140. There are 20 of them that they are not really good or they are not good enough for these wines. So we sell the grapes. There are 20 or 30 that they are too young for the moment to be used because we don't use the grapes until they have 10, 11 years old. But all the rest, 140 hectares, we use it for Valbuena and for Único. More or less 100 for Valbuena and 40 for Único and Reserva Especial. Okay, for us, the way of managing the vines it's been always the same. The first decision when Pablo arrived in 1982, sorry, the first decision he took was to stop using herbicides at that moment. So we've been producing quite ecological since the 80s, and for us, in all our wineries, but especially in Vega Sicilia, our heritage is our muscle selection. We've been doing a muscle selection during 14 years. We keep working on it, and all the new plantation. This year we did one. It's with all these clones that we select because we want to keep these Tempranillos, these really old Tempranillos that we have in our estate. So for us, the base for all our wines is producing the wines in the vines. So this is this is our heritage. Then when we start when we produce wines. Normally, there are some vines that goes for Único and Reserva Especial, but some other vines go for Valbuena. But depending how is the vintage, you can change of mind. So during the extraction, it's quite similar in all the wines. But in the first year of aging, that it's 100% in barrel, we want to sculpt the wine. We want to give shape to the wine. We want to give more roundness, more length the wine. So during this first year, it's quite similar the aging in this process. At the end of the first year of aging, we decide what goes for Único and what goes for Valbuena and what Reserva Especial. And it's the moment where we blend a little bit of Merlot and we for Valbuena, and we rack the Valbuena into big vats, wooden vats, for one more year. So it's in this second year of aging, what we work is more the precision, the finesse, the length, the texture of the wine. And after this second year of aging, we blend all the elements and we leave it for 8-10 months until we bottling. For example, we are going to bottle a Valbuena 17 next week. So this is a 2 years aging process. For Único, it's a little bit more complicated. So the first year is quite the same. It's quite the same. We use American oak and French oak. American producing our Cooper and French oak by 2 different suppliers. The second year, part of the wines goes back in barrel, part of the back goes in big vats. In this case, the barrels are used barrels. At the end of this second year, we blend the wines. We make different blends, different elements, and we leave it for 1 year where we don't want to touch the wine. And it stays in big wooden vats of 220 hectoliters for 1 more year. At the end of the wine, this third year, we taste it and we decide to maybe to blend or to put a little bit of different vintages inside. So in the 4th and 5th year, we can add until 15% of different vintage inside. For example, this year we are aging Único 15, and in November we put a little bit of Único 16. and we are aging also Unico 16, and we put a little bit of Unico 17. So it's like a 5 years old process aging, and at the end of this moment, we blend all the elements and we prepare the wine to bottle 10 months, and we bottle it. Yesterday we were bottling Unico 14, for example. So it's like 5 years old, or it's like a unique way of aging the wines. So for me, Balbuena is a really beautiful expression of our terroir, where you can show perfectly how was the vintage and you can feel how is our terroir. And for me, Unico is more, it's with this 5 years old aging or long aging process, you win in different layers, you win in different complexity, you win in, but you miss a little bit of the notion of vintage. So I don't know if you understood more or less what I tried to say, more or less.
So Valbuena, the reason for the 5 is that's typically 5 years of aging, correct?
See, it's 5 years after the, so now we are releasing 2019, 2016, 15, sorry. So it's 5 years until, say 5 years after the vintage.
And there was a Valbuena 3 at one point, right?
Mm-hmm. There was a Valbuena 3 until 1987. And at that moment, Pablo was thinking about producing a Lyon and to stop producing Valbuena 3. Valbuena 3 was a wine like it was released 3 years after the vintage. But Pablo wants to produce a more cosmopolitan style in a Lyon and to keep the more traditional wines in Vega Sicilia. That's why he decided to stop producing Valbuena 3. The last bottle was 1987.
Okay.
The
So,
question.
Yeah,
sorry. Fermentation. Obviously, you're fermenting grapes separately and you're vinifying them separately. Are you doing that by plot, or is it more about the quality of the fruits? And then how does fermentation take place?
Well, the fermentation, for me, picking in the right time is especially very important. We have to try to pick al dente in the right moment, not too soon, because if not, the tannicity can be too rough. Not too late, because the Tempranillo can lose the acidity and you can become too jammy. And so it's a hard moment, but it's the best moment for us. So when we decide to pick, we bring everything in case to the winery, and we leave it in cooling chamber for one night, and then we fill the tanks. And for me, with our Tempranillos, we use pied de cuve, natural yeast. And for me, the extraction have to be very softly. We have a lot of powerful. You have to be really softly. We do remontage, but small remontage. So the only thing you have to take care is not to go too far in pushing. So we taste quite often just to see that you don't go you don't go too far in extraction, because Tempranillo can be huge, but in our style we want to be elegant. So it's always a balance.
So often whether it's right or wrong, you hear people kind of comparing Vega Sicilia to Bordeaux styles. Can you just explain a little bit kind of, in terms of terroir and in terms of growing season, how Ribera does differ from Bordeaux?
Well, it's true that the conditions are quite completely different, because we have a continental climate. Really, like for example, nowadays our vines are like this, and in Bordeaux the flowering passed last week. So, and for us, we need nearly 1 month for the flowering. So due to the climate, because it's really cold in the winter and really hot in the summer, the cycle of the vines is quite short. So that's why Tempranillo goes really well in this area. And during the ripeness, we have really cold nights. Maybe there are some days of -1, or you can always reach. You can always have a frost during the harvest, and really hot in it. So the difference are completely different. In Bordeaux, it's not the case. In the Bordeaux, it's more an Atlantic climate, and they have other problems, but not the problem of the frost during harvest, and the cycle is more longer. So different complex, but the style of wines are not so that different. When we do blind tastings with Unico, we do every year blind tasting with a team, with a master wine and with different distributors and different people. And when we want to compare our wines, normally we compare against Bordeaux or some Napas, but we cannot compare to Burgundy, or we are not compared to some Italian. So it's we are more close to Bordeaux in style.
Speaking of which, I mean, you teamed up with the Rothschild family, correct, for the McCann project. How did that come about?
Well, Pablo he was thinking about doing something in Rioja because he really believed that in Rioja you can produce huge wines, and he was thinking in 2000, 2002. And once Benjamin and Pablo, they had lunch together, and Benjamin asked to Pablo, "Why don't we do something together?" And Pablo, he said to Benjamin, because in our philosophy we always do alone, because we think that until you arrive to your style, you need time. Until you need a lot of time to know how everything goes. And Benjamin asked him, but how long it takes? And Pablo said to him, around one generation. And he said, okay, let's go and let's do together. And that was the beginning. And from then on, we've been working at the beginning secretly from 2004 until 2009. We were buying vines, and people didn't know that we were buying vines. In 2009, we rent a winery, and that's the moment we start producing wines. And in 2016, we finished our winery with all the facilities we have I always say that I'm the spoiled winemaker in the world, because
I was looking at some photos of the winery the other day. It looks like a pretty nice spot to work.
A question about the McCann. Currently, you produce two labels, the McCann Classico and the McCann. Are there plans to expand that project, or potentially expand any other projects in Spain?
Well, for the moment, we are focusing quite a lot in McCann, because I think it's the last challenge, and we have to show people that we can produce a great wine, and we're focusing quite hard in making better and better wines. One of the first thing Pablo asked me in 2015 is that McCann is a good wine, but I think there's a lack of something. We have to keep improving, and we are working very hard to push in McCann. So for the moment, we are focusing quite a lot. We are also focusing in mandolas, in our dried fulmin, because we believe that we have a huge potential, and that's why we start working with a Burgundy consultant to help us to keep pushing this project. For the moment, we are focusing on this, but maybe in the future, why not a new winery? Why not? I don't know if in Spain or outside, but why not?
And for those watching who don't know, maybe we could explain the difference between the McCann and the McCann Classico.
Well, we try to do two different styles. At the beginning, they were quite close, but I think more and more we are making difference between both of them. In McCann Classico, we want to make a more fresh, friendly, direct, and fruit-forward wine that everybody understands. And in McCann, we want to produce something with more density, more texture, more length, with more thickness. So a wine that can age longer. So, and since the vine and with the new facilities, we can do it. We can do different fermentation, we can do different aging, and I think we are more and more making the different styles.
With respect to Rioja, Ribera del Duero, taking on this project of McCann, and for you as a winemaker, I think it's really interesting to say you've been there since 2015. Vega Sicilia obviously is an immense brand. How is it that you're able to branch, your own winemaking style, and then also taking that house style from the Ribera del Duero to the Rioja, How do you like, what are you looking to do? And how, like, obviously for me, when I taste McCann, it feels like a Vega Sicilia product. There's that sort of undercurrent of oxidation. There's that really tightly grained wood, you know, that sort of opulent feel to the wine. What are the challenges in being a winemaker for this big company and then doing it over two different, you know, primary regions?
Well, the challenge, well, you always, the challenge is to produce one of the best wines in every place. Or one, in Toro, in Pinta, we want to produce one of the best Toros. In Ribera, well, I think we are one of the best one. And in McCann, we want to be one of the best one. It's true that the behavior of the Tempranillo, depending where it's grown, is completely different. For example, in McCann, the extraction, you have to go really, really soft. And for example, the press in McCann, we work the press differently. We find the press before we blend it in June. So we work differently how we blend, how we work how we do the extraction and how we work with the press. And for example, the type of wood, it's completely different, the toast and the wood. So, but until you know which wood goes better, which terroir you have to push more or you have to do less extraction, it takes time. But our objective is, like you said, we want that the people think that McCann is one of the best wines in Rioja, and they believe and they feel the style of Vega Sicilia style, where we try to produce really elegant wines with working the texture. I don't know if I answer you, but sí, more or less.
Por lo más, sí.
What's in your glass?
I have Valbuena 16.
How is it?
We follow the Valbuena 16 is going to be released next year, but every 2 months, we try all of them to see how is the evolution. And last Friday, I opened a bottle of Valbuena 16. I brought the bottle to my house. So now I'm enjoying it.
Very good.
One thing I wanted to ask you about is you touched on before. You have your own cooperage, correct? And so is that's not producing all the oak. So you are purchasing as well. But so what are you making on site then?
Well, we in our philosophy, well, as I tried to say before, we have a cooper where we produce more or less 1/3 of our needs for all the wineries. Okay. So in our philosophy, we try to adapt ourselves depending how is the vintage, more warm vintage or more cooler vintage. Jose Enrique, our master cooper, he had 2 different toasts for different regions. He has 2 toasts for McCann, he has 2 toasts for Vega Sicilia and 2 toasts for Pintia. Vega Sicilia and Leon, the toasts are quite similar. So depending how is the vintage, we told him produce more this toast or produce more this toast, so we can adapt much better depending how was the vintage. We produce in our cooper American oak, mainly American oak, around 550, depending how is the vintage, 500, 600 barrels. And we are starting also producing a little bit of French oak. But still we buy around 1,500 barrels per year, depending how is the vintage, to different suppliers. For me, having a cooper is great because we can adapt ourselves much better, but also it's great because we can control what we receive. My master cooper opens all the barrels we receive and double check how are they. And so for me, it's as I said before, I'm spoiled. So for me, it's great to have a cooper. We are always learning with him.
And in terms of, I mean, Vega Sicilia, the wines are known for obviously the extremely long aging potential. And you hold them back. I think I was reading that there was an example of one point where, you didn't release a wine for, I think, 28 years.
Well, at the beginning, they didn't release wines. Eloy Lecanda and Family Herrero, especially the first part of the Family Herrero, that they were really bon vivants and they didn't release wine. They give their wines to their friends, and so they at the beginning they didn't release wines, and everything was gone. The first bottle we have it's 1915.
Yeah.
Pablo saw one bottle of 1898, but everything was gone. Everything was drink it or I don't know. But for me, as you said, for me, the best thing we had is our huge capacity of aging. There was a huge tasting in 2014 of a Brazilian collector. For us, it's one of the biggest one in the world, and he did a tasting of 100 in between Único and Reserva Especial, 100 different bottles. And for him, he's been doing this with different other wineries, with the DRC, where the last one he did was 300 different wines from 82 Bordeaux. And for him, we are the most consistent wine in the world because our capacity of aging, and it's true. Every time you have the opportunity to try a wine from 39, for the 40s, 50s, 60s, is beautiful because the complexity, the shape is incredible, and this is Jesus Anadon used to say that I don't know what happened here, but when you produce wine, they are huge wines. And I've been working only 5 years for Vega, and I don't know what happened here, but we have something different that you can make huge wines.
But that's something specific, you know, more than just Ribera. That's very Vega specific, which is I find so interesting.
Like when you taste young Vega Sicilia wines, for me, the tannins are always exceptionally present, and they feel very, very big, but also extremely close grained, extremely fine. And when you taste old Vega wines, those extremely fine tannins, you know, they're still lengthening and lengthening and lengthening, but they're still very, very fine. They become more and more supple. And for me, I mean, you get a 20 or 30-year-old bottle of Tempranillo, often, you know, they can fall apart pretty easily, whereas this is definitely not the case with these wines. There's something about that tannic structure for me that is, it's just a marker. Like I can taste it and you say that's Vega. It's like those extremely fine, dense tannins.
Yeah, I totally agree. The tannicity, at the beginning we are like a French journalist said once that at the beginning we are like a Bordeaux, but when the wines get older, we look more like a Burgundy wine. It's like, as Alexander said, at the beginning we are huge with big tannins, tight, but they're really beautiful tannins with a lot of density in the wine. When they get older, the density is more, we win in length, we win in complexity. It's amazing. For me, when I had the opportunity to open a bottle of the 80s, it's drinking beautiful.
And that's not necessarily something that's true of Ribera del Duero. Like,
no.
It's not.
The Ribera del Duero, the problem in the Ribera del Duero, depending how was the vintage. For me, with a Leon, for example, for me, vintages like 7, 8, 3, vintages where you had frost or you had really warm, the wines don't age that much. They can age 10, 15 years. Other vintages, well, yes, they can age 20, 25. So I think it's our specific soil of white clays, of gypsum, of carbonate. I think this is the secret of our capacity of aging. Also, the long aging process helps to make these wines age so long. But for me, it's the specific soil we have.
Yeah, I mean, they wear the oxygen very, very well. It's, you know, like a nice jacket.
Mm-hmm.
How do you treat them in the restaurant? Like when someone orders, what is it? Just immediate to decant, or what? Like what? How do you go about it?
Yeah, in my opinion, the wines can take quite a bit of air, and that's kind of obvious from the winemaking. So yeah, we decant. Now, you know, more often than not, because we offer corkage, people bring the wines pretty often. We have some people that bring them in frequently. And so as a result, I've gotten a chance to see, you know, more variation in vintage. But across the board, I would say, you know, if it was me drinking them at home, I would open them the day before, personally. I don't know how you feel about that, Gonzalo.
Well, I like if you have time enough. For example, I opened this yesterday and today showing beautifully. If you have time, the wines are going to be. The problem nowadays is that we don't have time and we have to rush, and it's a pity. But for me, I will open yesterday, have a glass, and keeping having glass today to keep enjoying it. But the problem now today is that the people, we are all running all around.
Does that have a bit to do with why you hold the releases for so long? Is there a point where it's, you know, when you do hold them back, is it because you start to think, you know, this is getting to a point where it's starting to be drinkable, or, you know, how do you make the decision as to when to let things move to market?
Well, we try to release when it's ready. That's why, for example, we release 7 and 8 before 5 and 6, and sometimes we jump and we release wine, youngest wines before than oldest one. So we try to release them when we feel that they are ready. So that's why, and I think the bottle, it's very important. We, for Unico, we leave it in the bottle for 4 years, and how the integration of all the elements, it's gorgeous. So we try to release it when we feel that they are ready.
Maybe we can pivot a little bit and speak to Oremus, and you could kind of tell us how that came about.
Well, Oremus is it's a beautiful project, and it was when the communists finished in the 1990s. Well, they used to produce different wines than nowadays. They used to produce sweet wines with alcohol. So it was not the type of wine that they are producing nowadays. So, but the market changed completely, and because the communists finished and all these wine, they couldn't sell these wines to these countries, so they had to reinvent themselves. So they opened the country to different investors. Some people from France came, some people from UK came, and one people from Spain, Vega Sicilia, came. And why? Because in all the projects where the family Albert invests, they have to feel passion. And for us, Tokai is one of the mystic place to produce wines. The oldest wine I ever tried was from Tokai, from 1866, and it was huge. And these are the huge place. It's been a long way because sweet wines or desert wines, they are not really trendy. But well, nowadays things are going quite well. And it's been a long way to do our master selection, to rebuild all the winery, and to recover the old way of doing wines. But nowadays we're quite happy with the result.
Can you speak to the range of wines that you produce there?
Well, there we produce a dried wine, mandolas,
Yeah.
of Fulmin, 100% Fulmin, where we use a little bit of barrel out of Baton, new oak, 10, 15, 20, depending on the year, and all use oak. And it's a beautiful wine. And then we produce a late harvest that is a more approachable or more easy to understand desert wine. So like a wine to show people how these wines can be. That is where it's a late harvest, where we harvest by bunch, and we press and fermentation, a little bit of barrel. So it's easy to produce, but really nice balance to show people how wines can be. And then we produce the asu wines, the wine that we have to harvest berry by berry, and we still producing 3 of them, 3 putoños, 5 putoños, and 6 putoños. And depending how much concentration you want, you put more or less putoños. 5 putoños is 125 kilos of asu berries. 3 putoños is 75 kilos of asu berries. So the balance changed a little bit. In 3, you have around 130 grains of sugar. In 5, 150, and in 6, you have 170, depending how is the vintage. So the balance changed completely. But for me, 5 putoño, well, all are really nice, but Late Harvest is really nice, easy peasy, Japanese. Three, you start having a little bit more of concentration. Five is what I love most. Six is maybe too much, but and Essentia is Essentia. But well, we have to show people how they have to drink this type of wine, because people normally they believe that they are desert wines, but it is not really true.
So what are your suggestions then? How should people approach it?
For example, with Three Putoños, once I had a really nice blend with a mole poblano from Mexico. And with the Late Harvest, I had different times with curries and spices things. So you can put them, or of course, with the blue cheeses and with foie gras, but this is more known. But I think you can discover many different matches.
Some cochinillo, no?
Cochinillo, for example, with we have a lot of acidity. So with cochinillo works very well.
Cochinillo is a local dish, and
What is it?
it's a very, very young suckling pig. You find it in Segovia and well, in all of that region. They eat the animals very young in Castile and Leon.
Really small ones.
How have you seen, with the influx of foreign investment in Hungary, have you seen the styles of wine beginning to change, or is there still this focus on traditional styles?
Well, when they start in the 90s, when they start, they have to reinvent themselves. So there was like two schools, one more oxidative school and one more Bordeaux school. We are more in the more Bordeaux school, but it's a choice of the wineries for the aging. And also depends the balance of in between the different varietals. Furmin for us is our main varietal because of the acidity, but there are other people that prefer more hash value. So depending your philosophy, people do it differently. In our case, we prefer to have more Furmin in our balance, and with more less oxidative way of aging. It's only a 2 years aging process. So for us, for the ASU ones, so for us is to give more the freshness and to have more franco, the nose more frank, and but there are other people that prefer more old way of brewing. So it's, I don't know who is right, but but it's like this.
In terms of, I could ask the same question, I guess, about Ribera as well. How have you seen it evolve over, the last, especially as you've been there, but over the years?
Well, I think nowadays we are in the best moment ever. I think nowadays you can find here in Ribera young producers that they are doing very well. Huge wineries that are pushing a lot of wine, but good wines. Wineries like Pingus, like ours. So nowadays, I think there's never been a moment like today. So you can have a lot of different Riberas. In the past, there was a really trendy mode that people make wines, Parker's wine, where they used to use a huge quantity of oak, but nowadays, like the people are reduce the wood and they try to be more and more ecological and to do the things more natural, in a natural way. In the past, they were only in the 80s, at the beginning of the Ribera del Duero, there were only a few producers, Vega Sicilia, Protos, Pesquera, a few that they were doing very well. But it's true that in Spain in the 2000, a lot of people win a lot of money in the construction and they start building wineries, but they weren't in the they didn't live in the wine. So they start producing wine for the prestige, but they plant in the wrong places. So the Ribera has been good at the beginning, bad in the middle, and now it's in the best moment. So. Well, I sorry for my explanation.
No, perfect. Because I was just thinking, so 2020, I guess, is the first complete vintage for you at Vega because you started in 2015, correct?
I started in 2015, yes.
So what changes, like how have you evolved and what changes have you made in terms of winemaking since you've been there?
Well, my team, myself, well, in the life of a wine, there is always evolution. This is something Pablo told me. We don't like revolution, we like evolution. And in all the wineries and Vega, we are reducing the percentage of new oak and the percentage of barrel, and we are increasing the capacity of aging in big wooden vats. So since 2015 to nowadays, we increasing 25% of our capacity of aging in big wooden vats. Why? Because we want to work the finesse, the elegance, but it's not a change of style. It's an evolution of style. We are working mainly in the aging aspect in all the wineries. But,
Can I ask a question about vine age as well? I mean, in Ribera, but also in Toro, because I know you have a large quantity of very old vines, and I'm wondering if those old vines, I mean, obviously would contribute to complexity, but are they more resistant to disease? Are they hardier? Could you tell me a little bit about them?
well, we are with our muscle selection that we start doing in 2003. We are working this. We have 25 different clones in Tempranillo to see which one are works better against the diseases, against the region, and we are working very hard because we believe that in 10 more years we don't have to use any pesticides, any treatment. Now we are ecological, but in the future we think that we are not going to use any. But and that's why we are working very hard. And it's true that some old Tempranillos have more resistance against diseases, but for the moment we don't have. We need more time to keep studying this. Nowadays, the problem of the Tempranillos that we produce in the 90s, or when all the new plantation, is that they were 3 clones, really productive and with huge berries, that they are really easy attacked by mildew. So all the plantation in the 2000, 2008, for me, they are not the best ones. So we have to go back and recover this old Tempranillo to try to put them to help us for the diseases and also for the cycle of the vine. So to long the cycle to ripe a little bit later. So we are working hard in this subject.
And do you ever vinify by plot?
Yes, we always vinify by plot. In fact, I'm quite spoiled in Vega. I can do it by plot. We have around 55 different plots, and we can vinify by plot. And normally, when we also have tanks for malolactic, we have one tank for alcoholic and one tank for malolactic. So if you don't want, you don't blend it. So normally we leave it until the malolactic is finished, and we cool the wine and we take out all the gas to decide if we start blending the wines or not. I'm quite spoiled because we have everything I need. But it's very important if you want to do the things properly. If you want to do perfect extractions, it's very important to do it, if you can, to do it like this.
We had this conversation with quite a few people that we've spoken to over the last 2 months. How have you seen climate change affect or shift in Ribera? Has there been any kind of dramatic shifts over the last, say, 10 years, or?
It's a question, and it's a little bit really hard to answer because I don't know. It's true that in the 60s, the wines had less alcohol, more acidity, but it's true that the viticulturists have changed completely. Nowadays, we live smaller scales. We work much more the canopy. We work much more the the people, well, some people try to ripe a little bit more. So I don't know how much of this is the hand of the man, or how much is the climate change. But still, we are working very hard. As I said before, we are working in a clonal selection to try to have the best clone against the diseases and the more late in the season. We also plant we start planting in 1996 cork trees and oak trees, and now we have around 400,000 trees to have more biodiversity and to have a little bit of more cooler microclimate in our place. The next work we are going to do in the next future is we're going to work with we're going to do a sort of nursery with our own root stocks from the oldest plot we have of Montagnon of 120 years. The root stocks were completely different, so we are going to study this root stock because we saw that some of them have more resistance against the. So we are doing but it's a work that takes you long time. It's not and we are working to prepare ourselves. But I think the hand of the man have changed more than the climate warming, the warming permit.
Have you seen palate? Obviously, it's never been a focus for Vega to kind of shift styles for palates, but have you seen people's palates change, especially in Spain with, how they approach wines and what they want to drink?
I think the people more and more in Spain in the 80s, they used to drink 50 liters per person and bad wines. Now we drink 50 and 15. Now we drink 15 and much better wine. Now I think the industry in Spain is the best moment ever, where you can see really nice wines everywhere. Not red wine, but really nice wines in all the places in Spain. So I think people drinks better, and I think people likes to enjoy the trendy of the wood. It's changed a little bit, and now the people try to do their own. They try to find their own philosophy. Sometimes you achieve, sometimes no, but people are doing better and better. I think so. I don't know. What do you think, Alessandro, about the
There's no question that Spanish wine in general, as I said earlier, the quality in the last 20 years has skyrocketed. And I think that also, a lot of people that have been drinking Spanish wine for a long time are used to drinking a mediocre Reserva Rioja that has an overabundance of oak and, not a lot of balance, usually a lot of alcohol. And coming away from that right now, there's a lot more elegance in the wines. There's less wood. There's more fruit. There's more balance. And, like apart from the classic regions, Ribera del Duero, Priorat, Rioja, there are some very exciting things happening in Spain. Canarias, Sierra de Gredos, Ribera Sacra, all of, there's really interesting wines coming out of Spain. There's a huge diversity in Spain. It's one of the most biodiverse. I think it's the most biodiverse country in Europe.
I think so, but not true. But it can be.
Yeah, and when you have, there are some big wineries that lead that. Vega Sicilia, Torres. They're at the forefront both technologically and internationally. So.
And maybe if either of you have advice for younger somms or people who are starting to explore Spanish wines, maybe where they can start and how they should evolve.
It's overwhelming for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Oh, they are pretty. Where they have.
You ever studied French wine?
They're very friendly. I'm spend 2 weeks, and they're going to discover plenty of great things in Spain. We are friendly, and there are great things in Ribera Sacra. In all the places, Ribera Sacra is not a really known place, but it's one of the most beautiful landscapes in Spain. You go to Rioja, where you can try wines from cosecheros that they are doing Hermanos Berzal, really nice wines and cheap wines, or you go to Galicia and really brilliant Alvareños. So we have really a huge diversity of wines.
Yeah, but also the price points are very, very attractive. Like if you're talking about in market, for example, go to Ribera del Duero and pick 5 of the top producers. You're buying wines that are going to be in our market, you know, $40 to $75 a bottle. You can't really do that from top producers in any region in France, or maybe Italy either. You know,
less, yeah.
not New Zealand. You know, like there, you know, there's still accessible price points. Like even a bottle of Pintia in our market, I think it comes in around what, $75 or so.
Yeah.
Those are stunning wines for the price. You go to the Rioja.
I think so. I'm totally agree with Alessandro. You can find here, and especially if you drink in Spain, it's much cheaper.
Yeah.
And you can find really good wines in Spain at 30 euros, 40 euros, or so and they are great wines.
You know, with age, with lots of age on them as well, right? Aged in the bodega, which is a tradition that, you know, it really existed in it existed in Bordeaux too, but it's sort of fallen by the wayside. But there's no such thing as a Rioja future because, you know, the bodegas hang on to the wines until they're ready to drink, which is a real treat. And now some Bordeaux houses, of course, are doing that. Latour and
trying to do it. Chateau Latour is a published quite friend of Frederic Angelier, and he make the same cellar or bottle cellar like we have in Vega Sicilia for 1 million bottles.
Wow.
To leave it in there so they can release the wine when they think they are ready.
Yeah. I mean, I would recommend everybody go to Segovia.
Oh, of course.
It's an incredible city. And, you know, go eat some lechazo or go to Burgos and have some morcilla. The gastronomy of the region also is notable.
How often do you get there?
Me? Well, I was in the Canary Islands on March the 1st.
Really?
And we got back just in time. Yeah, we were I was on a tour. And then my last trip to that actually was really an incredible trip because we went with my jamon supplier, Joselito.
The best one.
Yeah, the jamon is incredible. But they took us to Extremadura to visit the Pata Negras. And I mean, the most beautiful Dehesa landscape. And then from there, we drove from Cáceres to Segovia and Guijuelo to visit the factories. So I don't get, I mean, who knows what the travel will be like in the next year or two, but the last 2 trips I took were very memorable. And the last time we were there, we really got to experience the cuisine of León, which is, you know, a very robust cuisine, but very delicious. We tried to make some of the stuff here, but we can't, we tried to make some lechazo, but it's very difficult to get the lambs as young as you need them to make it properly. It's like if you've ever been to Rome and having a bacchio, the lambs are very, very small. They're very, very young. There's not that many producers here that slaughter at that young, and it's kind of sad because they're real babies, but they're so delicious.
Sad on both sides. One thing, just speaking in terms of releases and ageability too, is so we have a few wines in the market right now, and I was hoping you could kind of speak to them a little bit. So the 15 Allion, which I take it is one of your first, and then we have 14 Pintia, and we also just released the 2018 Mandolas, the Oremas as well. So I was wondering if you could just kind of speak to those vintages a little bit as well for us.
Okay, well, I start with Mandolas 18. And Mandolas 18, I think it was a little bit more warmer than 17 vintage. But I think thanks to the work we are doing with this Burgundy consultant, we are adapting ourselves much better to interpret how is the vintage. So we harvest quite soon in the season. These are volcanic soils of rhyolites and the seeds. And we reduce the percentage of new oak in 10%. To try to give them more freshness, and we reduce also the quantity of batonas. So for me, I think we did a good job because the wine now is really feeling very round and silky and really, I really like it very much. 17 was a little bit more length, but with more vibrancy, and this is more round, more, and it's very enjoyable, and I like it very much. I like it very much. Pintia 14, Pintia 14. I think Pintia for me it's well. I love Pintia. It's a place where, especially in Pintia in Toro, you have to be very careful when to pick because you can swivel in 2 days. And for me, at the beginning of the history of Pintia, we were producing huge wines, but nowadays I think we are doing really elegant wine. 14 is really round, really velvety, really full with a structure that really yummy or not really chewy. I think I think people are liking very much. And a Lyon 15 is when I arrived. The vintage itself was huge. Was very concentrated, small yields with a lot of concentration, with a lot of powerful. For me, it's a big one with a lot of density, with a lot of structure. With now it's drinking very well. I don't know if you tried them. I don't know if you tried them.
I personally, I think that Pintia, vintage for vintage, pound for pound, is one of the best values in Spanish wines against an international backdrop. If you're used to drinking Bordeaux or Napa, go buy yourself a case of Pintia and put it in the cellar for a few years. You'll be, pleasantly surprised, and it's a fraction of the price.
Mm-hmm. For me, if you can leave it for 8 years, now if you drink at 2010.
Yeah, the value of $3 is excellent. Yeah.
Well, it's one thing I wanted to ask both of you too, just before we wrap up, is in terms of advice for collectors with the wines, and we talk about the extreme ageability of them too, and kind of going through the top wines. What would be your best advice for people that are buying current vintage now, and how long to lay them down for, how to taste through them?
I think Gonzalo nails it with the about 8 years on a Pintia. It sounds pretty delicious to me. I mean, I tend to like Bordeaux that's not too old personally. And in terms of value and return, you spend $75 on a bottle of Pintia, you put it down for 8 years. It comes with a bit of age on it already. We have no problem opening those wines in the restaurant, decanting them and serving them. But with a few more years on them, I think they're better. The more structured wines, the more serious wines really are for a long-term collector. I think personally, something like Unico, you can really lay down, and you should. I think 10, 12 years is reasonable as a starting place.
I'm doing my own cellar from I don't know, for me or for my child, I don't know for the moment, but when Unico have 20 years, 30 years, you win in another dimension. It's completely different nights, and it's I like this style. There are people that prefer more the wines more tight, but for me, you win in a different complexity, and with 20, 30 years, wines are wonderful. I had the other day an 89 Unico, and I was showing very, very well.
Yeah.
If you have time, and you like this type of flavor.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about the especial that much, which maybe is the curiosity. And I mean, I don't see them as often in the restaurant, certainly, and we don't actually have any on the list. But I find that those wines maybe go through phases a little bit more. But maybe it's something, Gonzalo, you could talk about. Because in many ways, they're supposed to be ready, right?
Reserva Especial is, for me, is the most Vega Sicilian style, if you can say that. It's a long aging process. At the end of the aging of the Unico, you start blending different vintages. For example, nowadays we can have a 14 and 15 together in a big vat, and we are going to leave it for 1 year. For example, next week we are going to bottle, I have here the vintages, 11, 12, and 14. That they have been, we prepared them, and we are preparing it for bottling. So in the last 2 years, 3 years of Unico, you blend 2 vintages and you leave it for 1 year. you need, add another vintage and you leave it for 1 year and a half. So it's like 8-10 years aging process. What do you win with the vintages? Normally you put the oldest one, give you more complexity, more mature flavor, more tertiarios,
Tertiaries.
Mhm. And you put normally the bigger one that give you more structure, and with the youngest you play more with the freshness, with the give you a little bit of punch. Normally, when the wines are released, you have more complexity, you have more drinkability because you have a Unico normally can be more full body, more structure. So and they have also a really nice capacity of aging. So for me, if you want to taste something sooner than Unico, but with this sort of how do you say it? Aromas terciarios,
Tertiary aromas.
tertiary aroma. Maybe it's Reserva Especial when it's released is more easy to approach. Unico maybe you need a little bit more time to open it. So for me, it's something that it's the way we used to produce the wines in the past in Spain, to blend different vintages, and it's a really beautiful tradition that we want to keep. But sometimes it's hard because sometimes you miss some wines, but it's beautiful to produce these wines.
So that is more of a historical way of producing wine.
It's a historical way of producing. I always remember in 15 when I arrived, there were 30,000 liters of Reserva Especial that they didn't age as we like. So we had to throw this away. So sometimes you miss wines in the way because you believe that the vintages are going to go good, but sometimes no. So it's a long way, and it's hard, but the result is beautiful. Beautiful for the people who likes these flavors, likes this complexity. If you look for fruit, no, not at all. You look for freshness, no. You have to look for complexity, for these more tertiary aromas.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you for having me. Thank you, and I hope this year I supposed to go there, but I hope I don't know when, but I want to go visit you.
I was trying to remember. It was quite soon you were going to be here, correct?
Yes, it was. I think in May or no, June, July.
The days are starting to blend together a little bit. I guess it's almost true.
I don't know, but next year maybe I can go.
Well, we'd love to have you back.
Thank you for having me.
Or we'll come see you.
Yeah, that's fair too. Take a little road trip.
Thank you very much.
It was wonderful to talk to you both. Thank you so much. And for those that are watching and are curious, so we do have some of the, as mentioned, the 2014 Pintia, the 2015 Allion, and the Oremus is now in stock as well, the 2018. So they're all on halpernwine.com. Thank you. Enjoy the sunshine.
Yes, and you too.
All right. We'll talk to you all soon.
Bye.
Oh,
Bye.